Okay. Yep.
We're going to ask all of our presenters to come back up on stage in a minute. Thank you very much, Ian. Would the other presenters like to come back up on stage? And I would also like to invite Androo Kelly, who's the director of Trowunna Wildlife Park, and one of his colleagues, Paul, to come out and give us a little bit more information about Tasmanian Devils. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa. It's been fantastic. Thanks for having us here. Trowunna Wildlife Park is a privately operated wildlife park in northern Tasmania. We've been managing Tasmanian Devils now since 1979. A breeding program operated from Mole Creek commenced in 1985 when we started breeding Tasmanian Devils, and since 1988 it's been under stud book conditions through the Australian Species Management Program. 6 years ago, when the devil facial tumour disease literally reared its ugly head, there was a response to form, as you heard Ian say, a recovery plan, but an insurance population. It's also an indication in these times when the captive industry, the zoological industry, can be of great benefit to species programs. And you'd be pleased to know, Ian, that with Trowunna we maintain all our parasites, the rare endangered tapeworm, and I'd like to know if we've got those other ones in those devils at Trowunna, because we don't purge our devils through a systematic worming program every 3 weeks, which was recommended in the initial stages six years ago. So 2012, current situation of population of devils at Trowunna is 55 animals, 22 male, 22 female, 11 young this year. We work very closely with the Tasmanian Government Save the Devil program. I notice there's one of the veterinarians from that program in the room tonight, and we work very closely with them, so they're really keeping a veterinary eye on our animals over the last 6 years. And part of the reason is because we were the first facility to actually experience devil facial tumour disease in captivity. So we have case history over 6 years of a disease that got into a captive population, and we have now spent the 6 years in managing it out. And part of the reason why, of course, the Tasmanian Devils, as we've even heard tonight from Greg, this one, this is the sort of experience, or the experience that devils would be encountering each other, which would have, of course, been the catalyst for contact. And as we find that a lot of that talks about the parasites, whether it's a parasite or not, but off that canine tooth injected into another animal. So this is sort of probably the behaviour and mating behaviour which would be the transmissible time for that disease as what's known about the disease today. So of course in a captive context you can manage your population and separate your animals to a point, and we think we've managed it out of the park. But look, I wasn't here to give too much of a spiel, as much on the Tasmanian Devils. We also brought, you've got to see a Tasmanian Devil. Hopefully those from the delegates here are going to come and visit Mole Creek in another day or two, and we can show you, and we'd love to do a tour and show you all these the animals in their environment. But we do, Paul, one of the wildlife managers and keepers, who actually has been managing really the Tasmanian Devil breeding program for us for the last few years, we've brought along an old female. Her name's Madison. When everyone you grab the little baby animal, which is part of a problem in the zoological world where everyone wants to see a baby animal, we very much respect the whole life cycle, and after 11 generations of captive breeding of this species, we have seen in that time, if you work it out in your own head, how many grandparents backwards that is for us for 11 generations. Part of the reason, of course, is Tasmanian Devils have a very short lifespan. 5 or 6 years is their natural lifespan in the wild. We have them live up to 8, into some of them into their 9th year in a captive situation, because in some ways there's no such thing as old age in the bush. In doing that and managing the animals' whole life cycles, we've learned a lot over that last 32 years, and the park at Mole Creek has always shown its commitment to our native species. We specialise only in Tasmanian native species, and with the Tasmanian Devils, they're of course an icon of Tasmania. But at the moment, with all the talk, everyone's really sort of concerned about a disease leading towards extinction. Well, I'm actually from the side of the belief that it can't be a parasite if it's going to lead to extinction. Not that I'm a parasitologist. I love your work. I do. Actually, one of my favourite books is by Carl Zimmer, Parasite Rex. I've lent it to quite a few non-parasitologists, and however, they've handed it back before finishing it. They've turned pale and they can't face it. What it shows, I think, is parasitology isn't given the credence that it needs to have in a broader perspective of zoological management, and so that's why I'm really pleased to be here tonight. So thank you. And Paul's going to be taking the devil around now for people to have a closer look and a pat. We will have it over here a little bit later so you can have a closer look. You know, the features of this animal are quite amazing. When you look at a little animal, only grows to about 10, 12 kilograms maximum, yet they can cover a distance of 15 kilometres in an evening or a night. You equate that out and that's quite a substantial distance. And what happens as they get to that age, that Madison's coming around, of course the natural process of lessening mobility, the unusual gait means that they end up having a syndrome that they get a bit weak in the lower spine and discs, problem slip disc, etc. So in the wild, that mobility is reduced, and of course the home range gets less. The ability to find food is also less. Also, sort of, this is such a fascinating time for us after this many years working with Tasmanian Devils and what's happening in the last few years with devil facial tumour disease. We are part of a very important component of as I mentioned, the insurance population. The Tasmanian government has a partnership with several of the major zoos in the mainland, and a couple of the parks in Tasmania at least have jumped on board in a professional way. And at the moment there's nearly 500 devils in the intense captive component of the program, so we actually have quite a secure number currently in that 6-year period. And part of the reason that has come about is because at Mole Creek we actually have developed proper husbandry processes and care processes over a period of time and have helped the industry. We even do training programs at the Trowunna where the major zoos have sent staff to actually learn how to properly manage Tasmanian devils in a captive context. And I heard the work of David Obendorf mentioned before. Back in the 80s we used to work closely with David Obendorf, so the Parasites was quite aware of parasites, but also aware that Tasmanian devils are reciprocal for every kind of cancer, sarcoma, carcinoma known. So even in the whole study of oncology, this is a fascinating creature. No matter what happens with the disease, I don't think it's going to lead to extinction, but at the same time it's not my position to say that, but I still said it. So I think that in the future we might find that the Tasmanian devil will attract much more diversity of interest and research in the general field of oncology. But a practical solution to the protection of wildlife in the habitat, of course, it's a bit like saying there's more tigers in private hands in Texas than there are tigers in the wild. And that doesn't mean that the tigers are going to be protected because everyone's got a tiger in a tennis court in Texas. It's the habitat. So it always comes back to the habitat. Now I'm a little bit more optimistic than a lot. I still think we have got reasonable habitat process in Tasmania to see the Tasmanian devil survive into the future. But I really respect everyone's work that they're doing into this deadly facial tumour disease, and look forward to seeing the devils smiling in the future. Thank you.
For all of our speakers today, just absolutely wonderful, and thanks to the devil for coming out as well. We've got a special spot at the end there for her when she's ready for a seat. Now, we've got time for questions now, and that includes anyone who's watching online. You can type your questions in, and I shall hope to get those transmitted up here. Also, I've got a survey online at the ASP website address, which is www.parasite.org.au, and if you go on there and have a look for this public event, there will be a link to an online survey. I'd love to hear your feedback, and that includes people who are here today as well as listeners who are watching us online. Now, if anyone's got any questions, now's the time to raise your hands. We've got a volunteer with a microphone. Okay, we've got a couple of questions down here and one over here. Do we want to take the question down here? I'll just wait for the microphone to come down so we can hear it, and that way the online audience can hear you as well.
There's been recent reports of wild dog populations in Tasmania, whether they're reliable or not. If we assume that they are reliable, is it inevitable that we'll have hydatids making a presence again in Tasmania?
That's a very interesting question. I may not be the best person to answer that. The person sitting behind you
Yes.
may...
Just,
David Jenkins
Dave
is
Jenkins?
probably...
Yep.
Sorry, David, but you are.
Thank you very much, Andy. That's worth at least one beer. Wild dogs, I'm unclear as to what you mean by that. Do you mean domestic dogs gone wild and living independently in the wild? Is this widespread? Okay. Well, I think first thing we need to do is to go back a couple of paces. There was 30 years of intense control here, and the Tasmanian control program was extremely successful. There hasn't been a human case here, hasn't been reported for a long time. But what has happened periodically over the last 20 years, or no, maybe not that long, but 15 or so, there have been odd cases of cattle infected that have never left the island. Now, Colin Jessup, who's the High Data Control Officer with the DPI, and I have been looking into this, and I've been coming here periodically for the last few years and looking at domestic dogs in the areas where these cows are, and we have got at least 3 dogs that are PCR positive, as well as having copper antigens in their faeces. And we have 2 cases in humans who are seropositive. One's a kid of about 11 now, and there's a woman of late 30s. So what I'm basically saying is the parasite has not gone quite. What we feel might be contributing to the transmission of the parasite are packs of hunting dogs that go across people's properties chasing wallabies. Now, we feel that's contributing to another parasite that I'm working on, but that's another thing altogether. But getting back to your concern, one of the crucial aspects of the control program in Tasmania was that the parasite never got into the wildlife. Andy was talking about hydatids in wildlife on the mainland. It's an enormous problem. We have the most extraordinary, fantastic biomass of echinococcus in the wildlife. My international colleagues are just orgasmic about it. And I get pretty keen on it too. But it's a transmission pattern between our dingoes and macropod marsupials. And foxes are also involved, but at a much lower level. And that's another thing. Some bright spark went and introduced foxes to this island, which was what I consider an absolute sort of travesty. And foxes could also contribute to this. So I haven't answered your question, but the basic sort of premise here is we don't know, but the parasite is still here. And if you've got wild dogs, they are the perfect host for transmission, and they may act as the conduit to the wildlife, but who knows?
Thank you, Dave. And would you just pass the microphone to in front of you, to Jim?
I've got a question concerning the Tasmanian Devils. Do you think the scenario could be that since there's 100% mortality, that if you wait long enough, that all the devils on the island, Tasmania, will perish, and once they've perished, of course, the tumour has perished with them, and providing there's no reservoir of the tumour on the mainland in the safeguarded populations, then the Tasmania could be repopulated and the tumour would be gone forever.
Well, part of the insurance population is there, if that scenario does occur, that if the whole population becomes extinct, they'll bring them back. So that's one possibility. But we're not sure how long that will take, if it's tens of years, or whether it's 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 years. Where the disease first occurred in Mount William, the far northeast, there are still healthy devils there, and there are still diseased devils there, and this is almost 25 years later. So it's possible that there could be reservoirs of single devils still around that have the disease. So we'll never know when they'll be eliminated. But yes, if all the devils go because of the DFCD, you could repopulate them. But we're talking about a long time, and we'd much prefer to be able to protect them in the wild, of course.
The insurance population has a 50-year program. It's a 50-year program to retain 98% of the genetics, and it's on target. The talk was that if the Tasmanian devil was to become extinct in the wild, we would need a reservoir of 1,500 animals, out of which 500 would be genetically effective, to be able to repopulate the mainland of Tasmania. I would like to see a lot more information coming back from the field, because there hasn't been any local extinctions in Tasmania, even in the northeast corner where the disease was as virulent as 90% population loss. There is still healthy devils in that landscape, and also right throughout Tasmania.
I've actually got a question. Well, it was a comment from someone who was tweeting, who said, "I don't think I want to kiss kangaroos anymore." Now, I'm going to ask Ian, is there any danger in kissing kangaroos? I've already stopped my children from allowing dogs to lick them, so...
Well, I've never done it myself, so I can't speak from experience. I don't think it would be a very pleasant experience, but I can't honestly think of any dreadful disease that you're going to contract.
Okay, I'm going to put the question then to you, Andrew. Possibly you've had a close encounter with a kangaroo. Do they kiss?
No, kangaroos aren't, and animals definitely, like kangaroos, don't like kissing humans, so
No.
we don't encourage anyone to kiss kangaroos either.
Good. Okay, so that's one thing not to do. And
I just want to say that was me. I've not kissed kangaroos, but I have patted them a few, actually Trowunna as well, and in the wild at campsites when they come up and try and get into my tent. They were very tame, and I did not let them eat my food they were after. I didn't kiss them, but I just want to cuddle them. And I'm a vet nurse, and I'll admit I really don't mind the odd kiss from any animal, really. I just wash afterwards. But yes, I don't like the idea of kissing kangaroos with 60,000 odd worms inside of them.
Yeah. That's right. Any more questions from the floor? Yep, we've got one over here, Rob.
If a nematode is, I think the estimate was 10,000 times more beautiful than a giardia, I'm just wondering, on that scale, where the facial tumour sits, and also maybe the Tasmanian devil itself. I wonder if the panel would comment.
Do you mean where does it sit on the beauty scale?
Yep.
Who here thinks giardia is more attractive than... I mean... I don't know whether...
I think I'd go the devil at the top of the beauty scale if we were comparing all of these.
The eye of the beholder.
Yes, exactly.
Before I was involved with the Tasmanian devil, I was like most people. It's a sort of ugly creature, but I've got used to it, and it is an amazing creature. It plays such an important role in our environment, and it carries those parasites. It's a vacuum cleaner of diseased animals. We're talking about Tasmania having lots of roadkills. The devils used to clean those up. They're not there anymore. The dead animals in the wild used to be cleaned up by the parasites. It's got parasites on the brain by the devil. So I think on the beauty and intelligence and importance scale, they're 10,000 times more than anything else, without a doubt whatsoever. Wouldn't you agree, Andrew?
Yes, certainly.
See, there's two of us.
Three. I think we'll count three.
Madison, would you agree?
Any more questions? We've got one, Terry Spittle. Oh, we've got one over there. Okay,
Can
last two.
I ask about the genetic diversity of devil populations, and is there any evidence for subpopulations which express some innate resistance to the tumour?
That's a very good question. The Tasmanian devil population has a very low genetic diversity. It's about a quarter of what the human population is. And we initially thought that the reason why the tumour can go from animal to animal without being seen by the immune system is because of this lack of genetic diversity. We now know that is not the case. There is something else special about those tumour cells. We have looked throughout various populations in cryptic areas to try to find animals who had different genetics, and there is no evidence that they are resistant. So that lack of diversity may contribute in some aspects, but is not the sole reason for the reason why the tumour is transmitted. There is something quite unique about these tumour cells that allows them to escape the immune system. Lack of diversity is part of the answer, but is not the complete answer.
And we've got one more question over in the corner.
Is there any evidence that those Tasmanian Devil tumours metastasize?
The question was, do the Tasmanian Devil tumours metastasize? Yes, they do. They certainly do, and that's what kills most of them.
One of our cases in captivity that was turned out to be devil facial tumour disease was actually a tumour on the tail, and it then metastasised from there. So the very first case we had, a vet did remove the tumour on the face. It all healed. The face healed, but it metastasised in the spleen and liver.
Okay. Oh, one last question. Yep. Yep.
Okay, I was wondering if the human cancer experience has got anything to do with the devil. Is there any overlap?
Any overlap between human cancers?
What has human cancer helped or not helped you understand the facial disease in Tasmanian Devils?
Yes, that's a good question. Our knowledge of human cancer has certainly helped in a lot of ways. The techniques that were used to study human cancers have been used to study devil facial tumour disease, and that's what was used to discover that it was a Schwann cell using the genetics. The initial work was using the pathology test to help understand what the tumour is. The research and diagnostic laboratories use techniques that are used within human cancers. We understand about metastases. We understand about human cancers through studies of mice and other animals, so that's helping with a knowledge of devil facial tumour disease. The one unique thing about this disease is its ability to transmit from animal to animal, which you do not see in humans. And interestingly, our research on devil facial tumour disease is also helping us understand a bit more about human cancers. One of the markers we've used to identify this devil facial tumour disease could be useful in identifying human Schwann cell cancers. The new genes that have been discovered now that the genome has been sequenced, there could be new oncogenes for human cancers. So the knowledge we get about devil facial tumour disease has a relevance for human cancers and vice versa. And should the scenario occur that a transmissible cancer occurs in humans, this knowledge will be useful. And I think we also need to be aware that the whole thing about cancer is not contagious. We just need to be a little bit cautious about that. There are certain situations where it can occur. We understand how this tumour is escaping the immune system will help us with potential for any possibility of a human transmissible cancer. Not that it's likely, but you have to be aware of those possible scenarios.
Okay, I'd like everyone to join me in thanking our presenters once again for a fascinating evening. Thank you very much.